we talked a bit about your early life, and I think we just started to talk about your career. And I understand that the first thing that you actually did was working as a machinist, and you were actually making bombs for the US Air Force, and that was at RG Laterno Industries. So how long were you doing that for then, roughly?
Started the summer after my graduation from high school, 1966, which was a very lucrative job. I mean, to be a machinist apprentice at my age at 18, I mean, it paid extremely well.
Yeah.
As most defense contracting does, plus machinists got top dollar back then. So I did that the full summer of 66, and then part-time until I went in the service the following May.
Yeah. Okay. And then, and was that when you went for the training for the pararescue, or was there something else in between?
I went through basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah. And
during that process, special teams would come around and brief the recruits, such as they were looking for people for combat control. Those were guys pretty much like Rangers, because where a lot of the training the SEALs go through, but they're not, near as extreme as the SEALs. And they drop them down behind enemy lines to set up strike zones. And then the pararescue team came in and briefed on that. And since I'd been on a swim team and skied, and I didn't have a problem with water or swimming or running, because I actually just had played football, so I was in really good shape. And I tried out for pararescue, the running, the swimming, all the different things you have to do to qualify in the tests. And so I qualified for pararescue, got my orders to Fort Benning. I wasn't even there a month, just, well over a couple of weeks. I'd busted my ankle, and they pulled me out of school and recycled me. What they call it, and I ended up at Keesler Air Force Base and airborne electronics, and I went through communications, navigation schools, taught everything from radar to communications to navigation, electronics countermeasures. Normally those would be three different fields.
Yeah.
But I went through multiple schools, which didn't make any sense to me because I was ready to get out of tech school. It's too regimented and too much marching and all that other stuff. I just wanted to get to my first base, my first job. But after a year of going through all these schools, including the school for crypto, I moved to my first assignment at Cannon Air Force Base.
Right, and you were saying, we were speaking earlier, and you were saying that was quite unusual, the fact that you did go through all those courses. That didn't happen to many people, did it?
No, my whole career was quite unique. A lot of people that are career Air Force or career military, normally you get a Air Force specialty code, the Army calls it MOS. You get one, you pretty much stay with it your whole career. You stay with it your whole career unless you're cross-trained. I had 14 different Air Force specialty codes in my career.
Oh, that's a lot.
In some cases, they would just award me. For example, the F-16 had a 10-month school for avionics and automatic test equipment when I was at Kadena Air Force Base. And I didn't even go to the school. They just awarded me the career field because I just took the test and passed, so they gave it to me. And, things like that actually piss some people off because they're going like, well, I had to go through school 9 or 10 months or whatever, and they used to give it to him. But if I could pass the test, it didn't make any difference.
If you knew all the stuff, then you could do
Right,
the associated
they didn't
tasks.
Exactly, and they didn't want me gone in school at my command level. The people at upper chain of command, they wanted me out there solving problems and working issues, not stuck off in a school for 9 or 10 months. And so when I got to Cannon Air Force Base, at first I was assigned in the navigation area, airborne navigation, and I was on flight status, which means I could fly on any of the planes that needed me, mostly cargo planes that had electronics equipment in it, not fighters, although I have flown in a couple of fighters. But during my training process at Cannon Air Force Base, towards the end of the 60s, they sent me to school again at Lowry Air Force Base for the F-111 swing wing bomber, the avionics, repairing, calibrating avionics units, again, such as navigation, indicators, electronics countermeasures, and the test equipment, which is very complex for its time and advanced. And I went back to Cannon Air Force Base and started working in that area. And then I was sent to, at some point, about that time after I got back from Lowry Air Force Base, we had the F-111s that were, they were readying to go to England at Upper Hayford Air Force Base. And I can't remember the other base right now off the top of my head.
Okay.
But it was very classified that they had the equipment on board the F-111s to be able to drop nuclear weapons.
I see.
And so they had a nuclear weapons tester to test out the circuitry and the units on the aircraft for that system. Yeah. And it was a prototype. And the captain and chief, they were responsible for it. They had just come out with what they call push-pull pins. Part of that, we actually soldered pins and coax cables, and these bundles sometimes would have 15, 30, 40 different types of pins and coaxial cables in these bundles.
Because you didn't have ribbon connectors then, did you? The ribbon connectors weren't really invented then, were they?
Well, the thing is when you have coax, a ribbon cable, with the coaxial cables, they have to be shielded, and they even have things they call tracks.
It's not shielded, is it? Yeah.
Right. So, make a long story short, they stripped out some of the push-pull pin retainers in the cannon connectors, and everybody, from my squadron commander on up, was extremely distraught and upset because it was a prototype, and because it also had encryption equipment in it. Even the NSA people that were involved were pissed off. So I got together with a retired chief named Ted West, who had turned around upon retirement and went to work as civil service as a GS-12. And I told him, after he explained to me what had happened, I said, well, we can go in there and fix that. And I said, as lame as it sounds, since there's a 3-month delay in getting new connectors, I said, why don't we just use super glue and lacing? And lacing's where you take this really fine, like nylon string that's flat, and you lace it like a basket to support all the other wires, that 30, 40, 50 cables and wires in these connectors. And it actually worked. So at least they could go through their testing. So I got a lot of accolades for the fact that testing wasn't disrupted more than a week. And they were able to ready the aircraft for England. So I got a lot of accolades from that. And or notoriety, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. But basically,
and after that,
you're using your own ingenuity to solve that problem.
Yeah, yes, spit and duct tape, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. But you solved the problem.
Yeah,
the main thing.
Exactly. I mean, you know, the whole purpose was not to take the tester to England because they had production models that were coming off the line within the next few months. This was a prototype so we could test the different aircraft to make sure they were nuclear ready.
Yeah.
So, and then after that, I went to a field training management school on crypto to get further crypto training.
Now, just to slightly there, did you have to have clearance at this point? Have you got the sort of higher clearance for working on these projects then that you're working on at that point, or did that come later?
When I was in tech school for a year, I got a top secret clearance for the electronics countermeasures and crypto, and then SAP, Special Access Program, for the specific types of crypto I worked on.
Right.
So when I was at Canon, I had a top, actually for my whole career, I had a top secret with crypto clearance.
Right. Okay.
So while I was going to the school at on the crypto equipment, they basically had a portable coder, not as wide as a loaf of bread, maybe 10 inches long, and it had all these sliders that had rods coming out the end of it, like 32 rods or whatever, and you slide in the code, A through Z, for each rod, and then the code of the day, as they called it, the crypto code of the day for the aircraft and their missions, and you'd go out and plug the codes into the aircraft to the IFF unit, which is identification friend from foe, and the mode 4 was encrypted, so that when an aircraft was in the skies, in their transponders, our friendly aircraft, the transponders would all identify each other through this crypto code as being a friendly aircraft.
Yeah.
So, as we're going through this class, I told the instructor, I said, well, how hard is it to break one of these codes? And he said, oh, like 1 in a million or whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I bet I can make up a code and get it to work on the test unit. And of course, everybody in this class laughed at me and making fun of me. And so he said, okay, here, put in a code. So I put in this code with all these rods and, changing the length of them for the different letters. And they plugged it in and it worked. And he says, hold on a second. And he went and got his boss. And the boss came back and he says, he cleared it out to zero, everything back to zero. And he says, put in a code and let's see if it'll work. So I put the same code in I'd used before, and it worked. Well, that started a lot of ruckus. And it was a prank, basically, because what they had was they had like 10 or 20 test codes in the classified instruction manual. And what I did was I used the different letters and the 32 codes to make up sentences.
Yeah.
So I was basically putting the first letter of each word from the different sentences I made up in my head because I could remember them.
Can you remember what motivated you to do that? What was it just that you literally wanted to play a prank on them and you knew that you could do this, and so you thought, right, I'm going to just have a laugh with them? Was it just for that, or did you?
I guess part of it was a prank because in the military everybody's always kidding around or playing jokes on each other. That's one way of keeping your sanity.
Yeah.
There's been lots of military shows where people are always pranking or pulling jokes on people, and it was that, and I was just curious if I could actually remember 32 codes. And I was going to tell them, and what I did until the chief and then the captain of the school came in, and they seemed very upset. So I wasn't about to admit I'd pranked them. And then, so I finished the school that week. I go back to the avionics squadron. Captain Robert Sullivan and Chief Mackey were my bosses, and they heard about it and said, good job. We're going to get you some more schooling. And then a couple of weeks after that, this guy, they said, well, this guy, I don't remember, they said from the Pentagon or Washington, D.C., this guy in a suit shows up, and they pull me in Captain Sullivan's office.
Yeah.
And he says, I want to know how you broke our code. Well, I knew I was going to get busted or court-martialed or something, man, if I told him the truth. So I basically said, well, it was kind of intuitive. It just came to me. And of course, this guy wasn't buying my bullshit. I mean, he was looking at me like, you're full of, you know what? But I stuck to my story, so they let me alone. But those two incidents went all the way up to the wing commander, who was Robert Scott, Colonel Robert Scott, who was famous as a F-86 ace. So the next thing I know, for the rest of my career, it's just every time they'd have a brand new program, and a lot of times brand new programs start off as classified, like the F-117, for example. I'd get offers, from different colonels or generals or whatever, and say, hey, we'd like to have you on this program.